thank you so much for taking part in Talk with Sally. It's an utter pleasure to have you as my guest. Really looking forward to talking with you, learning from you. But could you please just introduce who you are and what you do so the audience understands?
Yes, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Jane Aldridge, and I lead our coffee division within the Nestlé UK and Irish businesses.
And I've had the pleasure of helping you transition into that role a few years ago and working with you in developing as a leader and developing your team. And when we started, crikey, Jane, little did we think a pandemic would be as hard as it got, hey? We've seen the whole ways of working change over our working relationship. We went from in-person to virtual, to the pandemic happening. And then I can't believe I'm even saying this, the horror of the reality of what's happening in Ukraine. And the impact it's having on people. How have you, as a leader in this country and supporting your people going through all that relentless stress of the pandemic and the worry and the fear for loved ones, for the world right now, what lessons and beliefs have you drawn on to support you and your team through some really volatile and difficult times?
Yeah, it's been such a sad and anxious time, and remains that way, and over a huge period of time for everybody now. One of my beliefs that has kind of surfaced, I suppose, through this time and very current, is that leading with respect and tolerance and patience is absolutely not only compatible but critical for everyone's collective state of health, state of mind, good outcomes for people personally, good outcomes for business. There was a time going back a few years when I think we might have felt a trade-off with that kind of style. I don't, and I think that's spoken to me personally really volumes in recent times, and I think I don't see that changing. From a learnings point of view, on a much more kind of practical front, if you like, the requirement in any business and in our lives to plan or to have a good strategy is clear. But what I think we've all also learned is the need to have as much, if not double or maybe triple, flexibility and agility. Now, with that, it's tiring. It's really tiring. And therefore, another kind of learning is around energy, which sounds really obvious, but managing your own energy levels, helping others manage theirs, being in tune with that, being in tune with both, has been another big learning for all of us, and stays this way.
Oh, without doubt. It's you can almost map it, can't you? Volatility with the energy levels.
Yeah. And I think you have to be able to recognize when you're full of energy and what you can give, and when you are totally depleted and you need to do something to kind of relax and restore. And I don't think we should be ashamed of that or apologise for it.
And you mentioned something really, really helpful to me, actually, which I've always remembered, which is signalling that as well. Just being open with yourself and your team about how are you feeling? And if you are feeling that way, to just be honest and not try and mask it as you...
Yeah. So one of the things we've done on a kind of very practical level is we do try, we're not perfect, but we do always try and have a check-in beginning of the big meetings, particularly the longer ones, which can take a lot of energy out of your day and out of you, particularly working virtually. So a check-in is really valuable. Sounds obvious, very, very helpful.
So Jane, one thing that's come up time and time again in our work together is your unwavering passion and commitment to greater diversity, greater inclusion and greater fairness in the workplace. I would love to hear your practical ways you've been driving this agenda that you can share with us that have helped.
Yeah, and just to confirm what you're saying, I'm really passionate about diversity of ideas. That's where it comes from. More ideas, the better, really. And the more diversity we have in our workplace, the more likely, it's not the only way, but it's one way of coming to that, realizing it. From a gender equity point of view, this is an area that I'm particularly sponsoring at the moment. And here we have been increasing choices around flexibility for everybody in the workplace. We're trying new areas as well. Job sharing is very much in a development stage, and we have got a couple of new, we'll call them a bit test and learns, that we're exploring here, because there are lots of related topics that you have to take care of. We're kind of breathing some new life into our gender equity network. Absolutely inclusive. We want everyone in this network, but often to build education and on particular topics. And we're really keen to get more and more allies into this from all over to help improve a lot of things, particularly bias, actually. I mean, look, you and I, if you don't mind me saying, we are by default biased in some area or another. And so any attention we give as an organisation, and me personally, to being aware of that and correcting it and creating space to adjust it, that's also something we're working on a lot at the moment.
So building on that theme, and it was International Women's Day last month, I'd love us just to kind of do a bit of a sliding doors moment. And if you could go back to your younger self who was setting out in your career, you've had a fantastic career within Nestlé. Are there any lessons you give yourself as that young, aspiring female leader at the beginning of your career ladder to where you've grown and achieved today? So any sort of 3 top nuggets you would give if you could go back in time?
It's hard to get it down to 3, isn't it, really?
I know,
in true sliding doors fashion. Look, I think the one that really stands out for me personally, would be to be, and we've heard it before, it's not new, but to be really who you are, be your true self, and know that, and always stay in tune with that, whether that was on day 1 or year 10. That wisdom that is well understood is worth reminding from time to time. The second bit of advice I'd give myself is find every opportunity you can and take every opportunity you are offered. I think there's a lot in that too. Seeing opportunities for the good, it's important. And I think probably the third is learn, and be proud of that. Take pleasure in it, and it will pay back at some point. The more skills and muscles that we all have, the more opportunities will arrive, and the more fun we will have in our careers and in our lives.
I could not agree more. And that's a wonderful way of bringing me into my next question, Jane, which was to ask you from a genuine point of curiosity. We've covered a lot of wonderful ground together, yourself and your team, as I've said. Is there a particular way, the real method and the work we've done around high performance leadership growth, a particular nugget that's stuck with you as learning, that you go back to time and time again, that's really supported your growth, your development as a senior successful leader?
Oh, so many.
Just one.
What I've really enjoyed, it works for me really well, is I like a tool, and particularly the examples where we've mapped use frameworks to map different things, different thought processes, different outlooks, different environments. I like that. Why I like these? Because they disrupt your mental silos, and they disrupt the way I'm thinking. So you look at things in a different light. One I think stands out for me, which I simplify as the 5 R's. I really like that model, and it pushed me to think across a different time frame and across a different set of criteria that I wasn't quite as comfortable doing previously. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and the 5 R's, for anyone watching and listening, it's about helping you understand your role, particularly how you're going to drive successful change as a senior leader in your job. Because the thing that I find really curious every time is that I would say 9.9 out of the senior leaders I asked to describe their job accurately, they actually can't, because no one's asked them.
We hang a lot off a job title.
Yeah.
But actually, that's not often the role we need to care about.
Exactly. And it changes over time, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and I think the more you own it as what you want to bring in that role, as you're back to your point about your lessons, your unique self, then having that clarity on the job is vital.
Yeah.
So just to bring our wonderful chat, and I could keep asking you questions all day, Jane, because I know there's so much that you can offer us. Right now, people may not be thinking is the time to invest. There's pressure, there's change, there's uncertainty, which there has been all the way through our working partnership together. And we're talking about volatility and how that can be disruptive for leaders. What advice would you give for a senior leader and or their team who are considering investing despite the volatility, despite the uncertainty out there, in investing in their growth, their own development?
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, leadership of anything, anyone, is a huge responsibility. Therefore, I ask the question, why wouldn't you invest in that? I find myself saying, what are the things or the topics or the barriers to wanting to invest in the first place? Quite often, the thought process of working out what those things are is as helpful as anything. if time is ever one of the reasons why you wouldn't invest in your own growth or somebody else's leadership, then I would say that we're not taking our leadership responsibilities seriously.
Great point. Great point. And if somebody's wanting to get that budget sign off, so they're convinced as that leader, like they want to invest themselves, they want to get their team also to that next level of high performance, what advice would you have about bringing that into the business sign off process?
Well, one of the greatest reasons you might have to needing to address something either in yourself, your others, your team, is when you listen to some feedback that others might wish to share with you about how you go about your role, or how you do or not deliver what you're setting out to deliver. So one tip I would have is go out and get some constructive feedback, do something quantitative. And if everything's hunky-dory and fabulous and you're realizing your dreams, then probably save the pennies. But if you find some opportunities in that, then I think you've got a good argument for taking on that type of investment.
And on that note, Jane, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your thoughts. It's been a pleasure to have you on Talk with Sally.
Thank you. Pleasure's all mine. Good fun. Good to see you too.